Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 12, Episode 143. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here this Tuesday, Steelers Nation. Dave, I was going to do an intro about some dumb joke about the Pirates and O'Neal Cruz and all that stuff, but the second we started, we got some pretty big news here via ESPN's Adam Schefter that defensive lineman Larry Ogunjobi is visiting the Pittsburgh Steelers today. So, good timing on that one to give us something to talk about here on this Tuesday.
Yeah, absolutely. And, well, look, the Pirates might not be a joke but, for at least a little run here. Boy, what a debut by that Cruz kid on Monday night here. Maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that later on in the show here. But Larry O visiting the Steelers. That's interesting. Going to be interesting to see how the rest of the day goes here. This is a same Larry O that I believe agreed to a 3-year contract with the Chicago Bears much earlier in the offseason, much earlier in the offseason, like March 18th, I think. $40.5 million with $26.35 million guaranteed, and then he went on to fail a physical after that, and then obviously the deal fell out. Still been looking for work ever since. I would imagine that the price tag has come down on him quite considerably at this point. But I wonder just how much it's come down at this point. And one of the things I would think that the Steelers would be offering him would be a minimum of a 2-year contract. And at this point in the offseason, Larry Ogunjobi probably looking for a 1-year deal so he can have a chance to get back in the market again next year. So I don't want to, it's news that he's obviously visiting, but I don't think a signing is imminent at this time unless maybe he's willing to agree to, say, a 2-year deal. I don't know, what, $5 million a year?
Yeah, that sounds about right. Obviously, I think health and the cost are going to be the obstacles here. To the man, to the player, he's been a really good rotational guy along some AFC North defensive lines in Cleveland for the first 4 of his years, and then with the Bengals last year and posted a career-high 7 sacks as well. So obviously, not that any one guy, in the middle of June is going to replace Stephon Tua, but Ogunjobi's probably going to do that job about as well as any one man could. Then everyone else rotates in, and it's a whole team kind of effort sort of deal. So this will be a good signing, I think, on paper. I remember I've talked about this before. My first Senior Bowl ever, I think, was Ogunjobi being there from Charlotte, and a little unknown guy that really had a strong week, run defense, running the football, those kinds of things. So he played strong run defense overall and offer you something in sub-package as a pass rusher. But again, where the health is in terms of his foot injury, we believe it's a foot. He had a foot surgery during the postseason.
I think it was Liz Frank, wasn't it?
Was it? Okay, I didn't know exact details on the nature of it, but that sounds right probably if it's going to be a foot. And then just the overall cost and the structure, because most guys are looking for 1-year deals right now because the big money isn't there, as you pointed out, but Pittsburgh would obviously much rather prefer a 2-year deal. So Ogunjobi just visited the Jets and left them, so they couldn't work through whatever issues they had there. So Pittsburgh may have similar obstacles, but again, to the actual player, this is about as good of a name as you could suggest.
Yeah, and it's one of those ones that once you get later in the offseason there, once again, the price tags probably come down on him, I would think, considerably. No way, shape, and form are the Steelers going to we talk about the hierarchy. About how the Steelers like to structure this hierarchy and all with their rosters, and when it comes to outsiders, you look at right now, Cameron Hayward is technically the highest paid player on the Steelers defensive line at 16.4 million APY. You go on down. The next one, really the next highest paid on the list would be Chris Wormley with an APY at 4.5 million overall. So obviously, if you were envisioning a guy like Ogunjobi coming in and being a starter, let's say over Wormley, then you would maybe expect his number maybe to come in a little bit higher than Wormley's. And that's why I threw out the $5 million there at kind of the start of the show. I would find it hard to believe that they would be willing to pay much more than the $5 million price tag on that, because you do have Miles Jack at $8 million. I don't think they would go that high as they paid him on a 2-year deal, and I think that would be a little bit too priced on Ogunjobi coming off of this injury anyway there. But it feels like if they were going to get a deal done on Ogunjobi, and I'm not 100% convinced they will, it would be somewhere like a 2-year, $5 million per year contract.
So about 2 years, $10 million total, roughly. You're thinking? Any idea what guaranteed structure?
It would be something like $5 or $6 million. They'd split it almost right down the middle. I would think somewhere in those lines. So potential. Let's call it a 2-year, $10 million, $5 million signing bonus, and like whatever his minimum would be as far as the base salary, which at this point might be a little bit more than $1 million on that. Might be 1.170 or something along those lines. So you'd be looking at, I don't know, like a max of like a 4.2 cap hit, I think on Larry O, and that might be shooting high there, but I couldn't imagine it being more than $5 million per year, or much more than $5 million per year, and it would probably have to be a 2-year deal, and probably at least half of that fully guaranteed.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say this has not been Mason Rudolph's favorite offseason the Pittsburgh Steelers have ever had. They bring in every quarterback they can find, and then potentially sign Ogunjobi, who did not hit Mason Rudolph over the head with his own helmet, which is a positive, but did shove Rudolph to the ground in that whole, you guys know this story there a couple years back. So don't think Mason is loving what Omar Khan and the Steelers have done this offseason.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not done yet either. And look, I mean, we've talked several times. I think Jerry Dulac brought it up again on a radio show, I think as early as yesterday there, was the fact that, look, if I was a betting man still at this point, I am a betting man, by the way. If I were betting on this particular thing, I'd still bet that Mason Rudolph's not going to be around by week 1. And in so many words, that's what Jerry Dulac said. Not going to be surprised to see the Steelers trade him. Obviously, it'd be silly to kind of do anything right now when it comes to Mason, unless you just got your doors blown off with an offer. And I can't see that being the case in the latter part of June here, but you never know how injuries might happen the rest of this way. And what team might be needy for even a backup quarterback. And we saw, I think, what Josh Dobbs fetched like a 5th round pick a couple of years ago there. So I don't think that's out of the question. But I wouldn't worry about making decisions right now about bringing in outsiders based on how it may or may not make Mason Rudolph feel.
Oh, yeah, it's a little tongue-in-cheek there. I'm just kind of laughing from Mason's perspective. Obviously, you think that's A, all the water under the bridge, and B, again, as you said, you got to do what's best for the team overall, even if it makes one guy who's not in your long-term plans a little uncomfortable. But, again, back to Ogunjobi, good player. Obviously was going to secure the bag and get big money with Chicago until the whole failed physical thing. So if you can sign him for a fraction of that, and if he's healthy, that's a pretty good place to be to kind of ease the losses of Stephon Tuitt.
Yeah, who would be the odd man out at that point? Or would you keep would you seriously consider keeping 7, I guess, on the 53 at that point? I mean, I guess it's a lot better problem to have, obviously. Mm-hmm. You signed Montravius Adams to a 2-year deal this offseason with a little bit of guaranteed money in it. Obviously, Tyson Alualu is another year older. Wormley, you would think is going to be on this roster this year. You drafted, obviously, DeMarvin Leal. You got Isaiah Loudermilk. I mean, you're starting to fill up spots there. Now, look, they've got just enough now. They couldn't tolerate, an injury, but you might end up keeping 7 at that point. You would think.
That might be the leader in terms of what is the most likely thing to occur, although that's something this team hasn't done, in a very, very long time, if ever. So we'll see. As you like to say, these things typically would have a funny way of working themselves out. One guy goes down in camp, something unforeseen occurs, then that might solve the problem for you. But yeah, it's hard to pick a name that would be exiting if Ogunjobi signs. And again, he's just visiting. We've seen guys visit and leave, and so today will be an important day to see where things stand with Ogunjobi. But don't want to put the cart before the horse. But overall, if they do get him signed, as you said, that's more talent's better than not enough talent. And Pittsburgh last year did not have enough talent. I think they want to try to make sure they have the proper depth this year.
Obviously this team has enough cap space to do whatever they want. They can obviously on the backside of this thing with if they needed more, restructure the contract to TJ Watt. I'm willing to bet they're wanting to stay away from that if at all possible there. And we don't know what's going to happen with Deontay Johnson the rest of the way. Look, even if maybe you thought the plan at some point was to dump Mason Rudolph, there's a $3 million base salary you would not be paying there. Obviously, roster displacement would eat up a good bit of it, but it's another $2 million there. What are you going to save in the as part of the Chris Boswell extension? What's going to happen is just as far as a regular roster cut down anyway? Is there going to be a vet or two out the door? Medium price one is going to save you, $250,000 in cap space there. That's all part of it. So, long story short, they could do a 1-year deal with Larry Ogunjobi if they probably wanted to, but if they did, once again, I wouldn't think that that a 1-year deal would total much more than $5 or $6 million.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we'll see. I thought it was a pleasant surprise to hear that news today, but as you said, it's just a visit right now, and so we'll take it from there, and we'll be able to talk about that more come Friday show.
I'll go on record and saying I'll be a little bit surprised if they get this deal done today.
Okay, and typically, at least under Colbert, and we'll assume it's the same under Khan, if he does not sign today, probably means he's not going to come back to the team at any point and sign later. Right. That's what history tells us, at least. Right. So we'll let you guys know, but that's some important news there to start off the Tuesday. Chae Claypool speaking on the I Am Athlete, I guess you can call it podcast, but it's a really nicely produced show that went up yesterday with Brandon Marshall, LaShawn McCoy, and Pac-Man Jones. And so the big headline here, and to me it's really a non-story, but I understand why people are talking about it, again, partially because it's June 21st and not a lot else going on. But Chae Claypool saying he believes he is a top 3 receiver in football. What's your thoughts on that, Dave?
Look, this thing's already going to be we dissected the interview yesterday thoroughly. It's a 30-minute interview in total. It's going to be cut up and chopped up and diced up and presented in different angles. Let me start off this way when talking about that interview.
Okay.
I thought it was great. And let me tell you, I have talked about this on the podcast in the past. I know I've tweeted it out as well too. I think Brandon Marshall's doing fantastic work right now. I mean, for what that guy went through during his career and the mental health issues that he's been through and what he's doing now on the backside of his career and really basically kind of reinvented himself. He's obviously part of Showtime's Inside the NFL. I think this show that he does is just absolutely fantastic, and I'm going to catch hell for this too. I thought Pac-Man Jones was fantastic on at least I don't watch a lot of those episodes, but I thought Pac-Man Jones was actually good on this interview with Chae Claypool as well too, and I can't believe those words are coming out of my mouth. But let's start this way. If you have not seen that interview, Man, go watch it. It's 30 minutes. It doesn't take long, that overly long to get into it, and it'll better put into context I think a lot of things that Chae Claypool had to say. Now, once again, you can dice up what he said. I feel I'm a top 3 wide receiver in the league. How many people, if you were a poll on the street right now, 100 Steeler fans would tell you that Chae Claypool's a top 3 wide receiver in the NFL right now? Probably none. If any, that number wouldn't be many. What do you expect the kid to say? Could he have phrased like anything else with these young athletes? Could they maybe use better phrasing in all this and say, I feel like I can be potentially a top 3 wide receiver in the league? Would he be getting as diced up as he is right now? Had he went about it that way? Probably to some degree. There's some people out there that are not going to listen to this that are just ready for the team to part ways with Chae Claypool. Okay, there's that section of the crowd. Him saying that he felt like he was better in his second year. That'll obviously take some issue. I guess what people are saying, he needs to learn a better lesson about false bravado and all like that. Okay, I get it. He is still a young kid. But my main takeaway, what is he supposed to say? I feel like I'm the 33rd best wide receiver in the league. Once again, could his phrasing have been better as part of where he sees he's going to be this year? And I think he threw out 1,300 yards, 10-plus touchdowns. Hell, man, I hope to hell he hits that. I think people should set high goals for themselves. I was glad to hear that. Do I think he's going to hit those numbers? Absolutely not. I do not. But it doesn't matter what I think about this. So I would imagine that that's one way that he's, one of the biggest way. Well, it is one of the biggest ways that he's getting attacked here. But I think if you watch that entire video, that interview all the way through, and look, I don't have, people have listened to me long enough since Claypool. I think Claypool's a very talented kid. I kind of thought he was drafted around earlier than he should have been. One of my main concerns about him is the ability to stretch the football and get on top of defenders down the field. Other than that, I think he's a pretty good kid overall, and I thought he came off as in this interview as I feel he's learned a few things since being in the NFL, and that's what one of my main takeaways coming out of that interview is seems like he's grown up a little bit.
I think so too, and I understand the comments that he may generate the headlines and the pushback, and no one considers Claypool a top 3 receiver in football. But as you said, every athlete should be as confident in themselves and more confident in themselves than anybody else, because that's what the position kind of demands. That's the mindset you should have. I remember in the pre-draft process, Bailey Zappi from Western Kentucky was like, I'm the best quarterback in this draft. And everyone's going, no, you're not. But we understand everyone, you have to say that because, what are you going to say? That you're fifth? That you're average? I mean, no, you're not going to say that. I think the only critique you could offer there is a little twofold. I think earlier in the conversation, Claypool talked about how perception kind of is really the only thing that matters. So when he's doing his TikToks and they were winning, no one cared, but he's doing the TikToks and they lose a game. Now it's a bad thing. He's saying that I haven't changed anything, but the perception of it is really what all ultimately matters. And then to say that in one breath and then the next breath say this when you understand you're going to get pushback for it, it's going to be a headline that doesn't have to be out there. So I guess the advice would be just don't rank yourself. I mean, obviously you don't say that you're an average receiver, but just say, because what he ended up saying was, as a football player, knowing what to do, knowing where to be, I was better, so I'm going to be better this year. He could have just stopped right there. But then he went on and said, I know for a fact I'm not like the rest of the guys in the NFL. I know I'm a top 5 receiver. I know I'm a top 3 receiver. You just probably don't have to assign your own ranking would be maybe the I think the most charitable critique there.
Right. I think that's kind of where the false bravado, he could have used better phrasing there. I'm trying to put myself in a position where people view me as a top 5 or top 3 wide receiver in the league.
Or you just don't even rank yourself. Yeah. Just say, I want to, I think I'm gonna have a great year and gonna make it to the best season that I can and do the best that I can every single day. I mean, that's all you have to say. You don't have to rank yourself, because again, I'm not saying he has to say like I'm the 27th best receiver. That's a silly comment as well. But again, ultimately, an athlete being confident in himself in this game is typical. That's how every athlete is and really should be wired. So to me, yeah, you kind of laugh at it, but it's not a big deal.
Right, but that's going to be the main thing that's pulled out of this interview,
sure.
and all the rest is just going to fall by the wayside, and then he's going to think, man, he's going to think, I'm damned if I do and I'm damned if I don't, because even in that, he does do a good job, and the part that I'm talking about when thinking he, maybe he's learned a thing or two along the way here is him actually saying, the fact that timing's basically everything, and that's the lesson I think Brandon Marshall was trying to get across to him too, as part of this. When you release those TikTok videos, will certainly play a big role in perception as well too. If you're releasing TikTok videos before a game and the Steelers go out and get blown out in that game, then it's all going to come back. That's going to be one of the easiest things to point to. So yeah, perception and we talk a lot about optics on this podcast as well too. That plays a big part in this, and I think he kind of understands that aspect of it. But then obviously you turn around and say, I feel like I'm a top 3 wide receiver in the league. How's that going to look from the optics standpoint too?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
As well too. So was it the perfect interview for him? Absolutely not. But I think if people go and look at that, and most of them won't. I mean, how many people do you think that listen? What percentage of the people that listen to this show will go and actually listen to the full 30-minute interview?
I'm sure
8%, 10%.
Yeah, it won't be a high number, but even if you listen to just a couple of clips, even if you can't make it through the whole half hour, just listen to even just a couple minutes of it, and I think you'll get a better view for the tone of the conversation and Claypool's attitude, which was, to me, very positive overall.
And that's what I'm getting at is, listen to us today if you want to, listen to whatever other narratives are out there. But I think everybody, because, he talked about Dwayne Haskins in this and talked about, he did good, I thought, dancing around the quarterback question. They almost had a gotcha moment with him there, talking about, who's your guy? And he caught himself, bro, I can't answer that question, in so many words. But once again, I'm not a huge Chae Claypool guy, thinking this guy's going to set the world on fire, kind of guy. I mean, in the same breath, I don't dislike him. I was excited to see the Steelers take him. Just my criticism on him was it was a round higher than it probably should have been, and that at this portion of his NFL career, I think he's got to do a better job of showing that he can prove that they can stack down the field, and that he can needs to do a better job of some of these 50-50 balls. Interested to see whether or not they play him in the slot a little bit more. But all that said, in no way, shape, or form, do I hate the kid or anything, or think he should be run out of town. Just my big takeaway overall coming out of this interview was I enjoyed it, to be quite honest with you. I thought overall, if people look at it, they might look at him in a little bit different light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought it was a good conversation. I'm not trying to over-critique and over-analyze it. I know we wrote about it a ton, but it is just an interview, and there was nothing super groundbreaking in it. I did like his commentary. As you said, he kind of danced around the quarterback stuff, but talked about Kenny Pickett's mobility and how that'll create plays in this offense you could apply similar to Mitch Trubisky. And, Claypool kind of compared that to what Burrow did with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase last year, where you got out of the pocket and made some big plays down the field. You saw that so much with Ben and AB, 5-7 years ago. So I thought there was some interesting commentary there.
Okay. Yeah, look, and, he talked about, usage and, possibly going. I thought for the most part he handled the Ben question pretty good, because that's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation too. You say the wrong word, and everybody think you're slapping Ben around. But in the same breath, I thought he handled once again all aspects of that interview well, except for the fact that probably could have used better phrasing when kind of describing his second season and where he sees himself league wide at this point.
Yeah. So again, encourage you guys to check out the interview. Listen to at least. We'd love if you listen to all of it, but even just to 10 minutes of it would be great. I think give you a good feel for Claypool, and obviously it's a huge year for him. You had to set the world on fire your rookie season. He kind of came back to earth his sophomore year 3, new quarterback. This will be a defining season, I think, for Chae Claypool.
And looking, it is a huge one for him, and the Steelers are going to need a huge year for him, I believe. And a lot of people, and deservedly so, are high on Pickens and Austin and all like that. I get but those kids are probably going to have some growing pains here, especially early on, and because of that, I think you're going to see a lot of 2 wide receiver groupings with 2 tight ends out on the field a lot. And in other words, they're going to be relying, I think, early on guys like Claypool and Deontay Johnson there. Once again, do I think 1,300 yards is pushing it a bit? Yeah, absolutely, because he's going to have to catch a lot of deep balls down the field and then get a lot of catch short, run long kind of catches to get those kind of numbers. But can he hit 1,000 yards after hitting a little over 800 the last 2 seasons? Yeah, I think that's plausible for sure. Can he catch 6, 7, 8, 9, 12 more balls than he's caught the last couple seasons on average? Yeah, I think that's possible. Can he get back to having at least, 7 touchdown receptions? I think that's plausible. What is a plausible stat line for him? Even though it might not get him paid next offseason, but what is a plausible stat line for him?
Yeah, that sounds about right. I haven't thought about specific numbers too much, and you understand this team may not pass the ball as much, and hopefully will have a more effective, efficient run game and can close out games with a run as opposed to fourth quarter catch-ups. But, he's not going to be the volume guy Deontay Johnson is by the nature of the position that he plays, the more outside Z receiver, more vertical concepts. But, you could reasonably assume, kind of like what you're saying, 65 or so catches for about 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns. What's that average out to from a yards per catch standpoint? 15. He's able to make some more plays downfield, stay on his feet more. Obviously, I think, the one benefit of Trubisky or Pickett will be an improved vertical passing game, being able to throw downfield more effectively, more efficiently. So, yeah, roughly speaking, 65 catches, 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns would be a reasonable and strong season for Chae Claypool.
Throw in there about 9 pass interference penalties drawn,
Yeah, and a couple of jet sweep runs, maybe get an extra touchdown in there. I think that'd be a good year.
Right. And look, if he does that, are people going to be talking about him being a top 3, top 5, top 10 wide receiver? Probably not. But it sure would get him closer to possibly getting paid, and obviously set things up kind of nicely for him going into what would be the final year of his contract. I mean, if he put up 1,300 yards, maybe he'd be thinking about doing a hold-in next summer. That would be a great problem to have. I don't think we'll get there, however. But, I think you put it best. I think somewhere between 65 to 75 wide receptions if he stays healthy is very plausible. I think 1,000 yards receiving is plausible, and I think at least 7 touchdowns is plausible. If he hits all 3 of those numbers and limits the pointing on first downs and the pointing in opponent, all the stupid stuff that he's done on the field to date, and there's been a little bit too much of that, obviously. Then I think he really would be setting himself up for either a moderate extension talk next off season, or going into the final year of his rookie season with prospects being a lot better than a lot more people on his side than there are probably right now.
Not to go down this rabbit hole too much, but if Deontay Johnson does get an extension this summer, is there any scenario in which Claypool catches a second contract with the Steelers?
Yeah, I find it.
Because it feels either or.
Yeah,
or neither.
It really. Well, here's something that I thought about last night. But I mean, he only has two years in, so they couldn't do anything with him right now, even if they wanted to right now. But obviously, if Deontay Johnson were not to get a deal done with the Steelers this offseason, you would really think there's a good chance he's going to fly the coop via unrestricted free agency next offseason. Do you maybe get in a position where you try to maybe give that same contract to Chae Claypool? I don't know. A lot's got to happen before we're having those kind of talks there. But once again, I don't mind him putting out there the 1,300 yards. I think it'd be absolutely great if he hit it. But I personally feel like I'd be just as satisfied if he hit 1,000 yards. Didn't have a lot of drops. Had a little bit better catch percentage, drew 8 or 9 pass interference penalties, got back into the end zone at least 7 times, and didn't do the stupid stuff that we've talked about the last couple of years. I think that would put him in a lot better position to potentially maybe get a deal next offseason.
And again, I think the big takeaway I know everyone on the internet is clowning Claypool for the top 3 receiver comment, but again, I really don't take issue with it. I'm not going to join in on the clowning, even agreeing. Of course, he's nowhere even close to top 3. He's not even the best receiver on his own team, let alone top 3 in the NFL. But I understand the perspective that athletes have, always thinking and believing and needing to really think those things, that they're the best, that they're the man, because that's kind of the mentality you have to have if you want to succeed in the NFL. So to me, it's a story about nothing.
Right. If the worst thing that comes out of that interview is people talking about false bravado, well, okay, I get it. And I get it, and I get it why that's the thing. It's the easy target right there. You don't have to.
Sure.
All you have to do is look at the graphics right now floating around on Twitter. You have the quote right there. You save yourself time to watching the whole interview, and you can look at it and say, well, heck, he's not even the top 3 wide. You can make a ha-ha and say he might not even be the top 3 wide receiver on his own team. And then run that way. I just think if you want to properly, get on him for anything on this interview, you need to go watch all 30 minutes of it. And I thought I came away with kind of a feel-good feeling about it in Claypool, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, and as you said, that I Am Athlete show is really well done. I thought everyone there was excellent. It even almost made me like Pac-Man Jones for a second, which, as you said earlier, is like a crazy Twilight Zone thing. So really interesting commentary across the board.
Yeah,
I thought Brandon Marshall was kind of like that mentor, like telling Claypool this is how it actually works.
Right. And Claypool talks about the money that he makes in social media. And
he said he makes more on TikTok than he makes in the NFL, which is, if that's the case, then
I guess
with TikTok videos.
With the Jordan deal and all like that, I'm assuming he's kind of including that in that, I would think. But
okay.
But look, I'm not shocked at all. Here's my view on this, all and has been for a while when it comes to social media. I don't mind these guys doing it because, look, the NFL is not for long, and you're one play away from your NFL career ending and it potentially changing your life in a direction like you saw what happened to Ryan Shazier. You got to get it when you can get it. But there is a right way to go about doing that side of the business. And I thought Brandon Marshall was very good in kind of laying that out there. And I thoroughly think these athletes should work on building their brand right out of the chute. But there is that kind of fine line there where the least little negative, nobody worries about it when things are going good when you're 11-0. But the moment that you not going 11-0, and I thought Claypool did a good point of presenting that, that's when it comes back to, well, if you weren't spending so much time on your social media account, then timing is everything with this, and perception, as they talked about, is a lot to do with this, and optics and all like that. I mean, should these guys be out there doing 5 TikToks or whatever a week, or 10 or whatever? I don't know what the number is. I think there is a happy medium in there where because look, a lot of fans do like that behind the scenes kind of stuff and all like that. And I think it's fun to watch a lot of it. Now, in the same breath, do I think you need to be out pregame dancing on the other team's logo? No, I don't. And they said as much, and Pac-Man said, "Oh boy, if you's doing that back when I played, look out." And Juju caught hell for that, and deservedly so. And yeah, it was all fun and cute in the first 11 games, but once they start losing, then that's the easy thing to point to right there. Let the Steelers handle the social media before the game. Let them be, handle that aspect of it. And then after you win, maybe, do your social media. Once again, I don't have an issue with it as long as they are trying to be conscious about the optics and the perception that go along with it. Because once again, the more visible you are, the more visible you are. Right? And the easier you are to take shots at there. So I've never had a problem with it, because I think these kids on these rookie contracts, a lot of them are not going to get second contracts around the league. So you better strike while the iron's hot as best you can, and get your endorsements and get your brand out there. But make sure you're going about it right way. And I thought Brandon Marshall did a fantastic job kind of laying that out there for Claypool yesterday in that video.
Well said, and I agree. I'm good with the guys wanting to build their brand, and they should have a brand. And if you can market yourself, that's awesome. More power to you. But the important things to know when you go down that path is timing, perception, and there are going to be certain lines you don't want to cross. And if you can understand and balance all those things, and you may not always get it perfect, I get that. You're 22, 23, you're figuring stuff out. You're going to make mistakes. Every 22, 23-year-old makes mistakes. It just usually isn't magnified under the scope and the lights of the NFL. But if you can overall find that balance and course correct when you slightly veer off course, then I'm good with that. And hopefully Claypool can better do that this year. I think he will.
Yeah, look, and I think he will too. Look, best thing with him is just go out and ball right now. Do most of your talking on the field, and then when you get off the field, if you win, go ahead and record yourself a TikTok or whatnot.
Yep.
Like that. But he's really going to be under the microscope this year for several reasons. You don't have Juju there, and he's one of the kind of the more veteran guys in that locker room overall when you look at the wide receivers. And he needs for the Steelers to have a above 500 season this year. I think he is a guy that has to hit maybe that 1,000-yard mark and that 70 to 80 reception mark and score 7 touchdowns like that. So he is, and obviously coming off this big interview as well too. He's going to be an easy talking point going into the season. Bro, I thought you were a top 3 wide receiver, that kind of thing. That's going to get thrown out weekly with him now at this point, running jokes. So just go out and start proving people wrong, and myself included, because I don't think he can hit those kind of numbers,
Yeah, happy to be wrong about it though. You and me both.
Right.
If he hits those numbers, then I will very happily eat that plate of crow. One guy who did not handle himself as well on social media, and I guess it doesn't matter as much because he's long out of the NFL, is Rashard Mendenhall. But I personally have to thank Rashard Mendenhall for giving me some easy Sunday content to talk about. Not really sure what brought it on, but he tweeted on Sunday morning, I never fumbled that ball, of course, referring to Super Bowl XLV, the Steelers lost to the Green Bay Packers. He says he was separated from the ball 4 yards into the backfield. That's the running back equivalent of a strip sack. There's nothing I could have done about it. Respect my career. And so, again, it was his birthday, so that's how he celebrated. I go usually with cake and candles, but that's how Mendenhall chose to to talk about things.
Man, that's the bad optics that I would use. Right there.
I'm waiting for the respect my career from Dave Brown.
Yeah, respect my career. Man, I can think a lot of different ways, better ways to maybe approach that. I mean, that's obviously something that he hears quite a bit, and anytime that he goes back in the news, it's either his 9/11 conspiracy theories or it's this fumble.
That's a heck of a two things to be known about. But you're right. No, you're right. I mean, it's the last time we wrote about Mendenhall was. The last couple articles was about the fumble, and then the time he called Ben a racist, and yeah, there's a lot going on there.
Right, and that guy's look. I learned a long time ago that Rashard Mendenhall is a very complex individual. Okay, it's all about how you frame this stuff too. I think I might have used that as a perfect opportunity to go the other way with it, with saying. It's my birthday and all, and I understand a lot of you are still upset about my fumble in the Super Bowl. I don't know what to tell you other than I'm sorry. Have a great day, But the way he went after that, it's inviting confrontation, and maybe that's what he's looking for. I don't know, but. It's unfortunate the way that play developed and Legursky pulling and not being able to get that block and everything in the backfield. But running backs are supposed to hold on to the football no matter how quickly people get into the backfield there. And that's what sets kind of the great ones apart from the average ones there. And I call it whatever you want to call it, but that was a fumble.
It was. And listen, I understand, that play was horribly blocked, and I'm betting Doug Legursky and David Johnson don't get the mean tweets that Mendenhall gets because he's not the guy that actually put the ball on the ground, and Mendenhall is not the only guy at fault on that play.
There's a lot of blame to go around in there.
And he's not the sole reason why that team lost, although I had forgotten too until I went back to that play. Man, Pittsburgh had just gotten the ball back. They got a good punt return. Actually, it was a bad punt by Green Bay. They had the ball almost in field goal range to start the drive. It's 21-17 Green Bay, start of the fourth quarter. I forgot how close that game was. We kind of think about that game as, the Packers won comfortably. They really didn't. I mean, fourth quarter, after that fumble, they marched on the field, they scored. That was kind of the turning point in the game. So even I had kind of forgotten how important that situation, that moment, that fumble was. But bottom line is, yes, the blocking was poor up front. Those guys did not do their job, but your job is to hold on to the football no matter what, as you said. And Matthews had a great hit and hit him perfectly. I thought Mendenhall did have good ball security, so maybe just one of those things that happened at the worst possible time. But to tweet about it over a decade later, basically throw your teammates under the bus, those guys know they screwed up. It just seems unnecessary. And I understand he's probably taking heat on Twitter, and somebody says something probably mean to him about fumbling, and that's tough to deal with. But not the right way to respond to that.
Yeah, that's the way I probably would. That's the way that I would probably wrongly respond to something related to that. And that's not a good lesson there. But and that was a big turning point in that game. Yeah, look, I mean, a lot of people probably forget. Remember Marquise Pouncey missed that game with the the ankle injury there, and I don't think Ben had a great kind of couple throws in that game, but the fact that you're still in it at that point and you're on their side of the field, and I just remember in the moment thinking, man, if they could bury this drive, they might be able to do this here, Mm-hmm. But that obviously was a huge. You want to talk about turning point in the Super Bowl? That was it, in my opinion. And that one specifically.
And I understand what Mendenhall is trying to say, but whenever he says he doesn't fumble, and the next sentence he says, I was separated from the football, that's kind of the same thing. And I get he's saying he was hit pretty quickly. But he did take 2 or 3 steps before he got hit. It's not like Matthews was there at the exchange at the mesh point when he was getting the football, and there's really nothing he could have done. I don't want to spend more time than I already have on it, but it and I don't understand at the very end of his tweet, he says, #free34. Don't know what that means, but I don't understand a lot of what Mendenhall says.
I think he's haunted. I think that's one of the things that probably haunts him, to be honest with you.
And he hears about it, I'm sure, all the time, which probably doesn't help the haunt thing. So I get, it sucks. I get it. And maybe there is too much criticism going Mendenhall's way, not enough to the offensive line. But you fumbled in the Super Bowl, man. I don't know what to tell you. Of course you're going to get criticized.
I mean, right. I mean, I just think he's never going to be able to escape that. Anytime you bring up Rashard Mendenhall, there's two things that jump out. It's his thoughts on 9/11, and it's that fumble in the Super Bowl. I don't think, and really the only other thing that comes to mind is him humping Ben Roethlisberger from behind at the end of the game against the Jets. But I don't know. I mean, those are the things that, and really the only other thing that I think comes to mind is him getting his collarbone or whatever cracked during his rookie season by Ray Lewis. I mean, those are not great things when you play word association or thought association when you bring up a former NFL player's name to have kind of those four things that we just rattled off there. Football, he's got to do a better job moving forward, and he probably won't, of just kind of separating himself stuff from that. Look, that was part of his career. It happened. If he's ever going to make any roads back with the fan base, he's going to have to start being on the other side of that thing.
I think that ship has sailed.
Right. And I agree. There's no comeback from it. So either you leave it alone and don't address it, or anytime you do address it, you say, look, I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you.
Mm-hmm. Maybe he has, but it doesn't sound like it, but he's got to just make peace with what happened. And it does not feel like he's made that peace. And I understand the Twitter trolls are going to make that more challenging to get to that point. But at some point, you just have to say, it happened, it sucks, and you move on and not dwell on it the way that every 2 years it seems like he brings it up.
Right.
And I'm not a psychologist, but that's probably not a healthy way to approach it.
And look, he's a thinker, man. He's put together different. And he's kind of always been kind of that out there kind of thinker, and I don't think he's going to change. I think kind of who he is, and he's just going to have to move on from it. So he's not going to win. He's not going to win you want to talk about perception? We talked about earlier in the show. He's never going to win that war.
Nope, he keeps digging himself a hole. So anyway, that was a tweet there, and at least that gave me something to write about on a pretty boring Sunday.
Absolutely.
All right, Dave, let's go through your 90 and 30 series. You've been marching along here. I think we last left off with, Claypool, Cole, and Daniels, correct, was the last group I think we talked about on the podcast. So the next set of 6 that we'll talk about today, starting with Carlos Davis, Khalil Davis, the Davis twins, and Jake Dixon. So Davis twins trying to battle for a roster spot, and if they were to sign Ogunjobi, he's going to make that path for Carlos and Khalil that much more difficult. Have yet to see Khalil take a snap in Pittsburgh. Carlos, last year played the first game against Buffalo, then dealt with a knee injury for most of the year, did not play majority of the season. So those guys probably looking at practice squad at best, unless there are going to be injuries in front of them.
I almost timed that perfectly having Chae Claypool in that group, didn't we? But we had talked about Chase, as you said, in the previous segment there of 6 players here. The Davis twins, boy, you on the heels of hearing reports of Larry Ogunjobi coming in for a visit and all that kind of has transpired so far this offseason. I thought if Carlos Davis was going to make a mark, it would have probably had to been last season. He was technically, I think, a starter and played a nice handful of snaps early on. I think week 1, somewhere in there was some sort of a knee injury, and then that knee injury not only held him out from games, it ultimately landed him on IR for a number of weeks, and by the time he gets back in this thing, the train's already left the station quite a bit, and not a lot to go off of overall. Khalil Davis, I think that was kind of easy to predict him landing in Pittsburgh, especially once the Colts parted ways with him after a couple weeks on their roster there. These are 2 guys in the Davis twins that the Steelers, I think, scouted pretty heavily at the Senior Bowl that year. It kind of felt like it was going to be one of those guys maybe would be potentially drafted. They're both on the Steelers. Khalil Davis obviously on the practice squad late last season. I don't think either one of them have 100 total NFL snaps played, though, right, at this point?
That sounds about right. They've been pretty limited. If they are 100, they're probably right at that number.
It really feels like it would take a lot for either one of these guys to make the 53-man roster. And by a lot to happen, I don't mean positive things within that. It does, however, feel like you could get into a situation where an either or of one of these two wind up making the team's practice squad.
Yeah, and maybe even both still. What practice squads are they 14 or 16?
I think they're 16. I think they decided to move forward with the 16.
Okay. So that's going to help anytime there's extra spots there. So we'll see. I'm happy to get eyes on Khalil this summer, and I don't know much about his game, how similar or not it is to Carlos Davis. And obviously for Carlos himself, we haven't seen a ton of him. There's been some flashes and some, very, very poor man's Hargrave kind of ability there, but that path's going to be tough, especially if this team adds another defensive lineman.
Yeah, I really think what you hold on hope for with Carlos Davis is going back to that Dallas Cowboys game during his rookie season. That's the most amount of snaps I think he's played in the game, and there was the most kind of positive that's come out of that. But that's been a long time ago now.
Yeah, and that was like 12 snaps from 2 years ago.
Right.
Was not a lot to hang your hat on.
Right. So those guys that got their work cut out this summer there, from where we sit right now, I find it hard to believe either one of those guys would make the 53-man roster. I think best case scenario for each of them, or realistic scenario, is one or both making the 53-man roster and then going from there. You get this far into a guy's career, we're talking, third season for both those. It's time to prove yourself right now there. So guys that I think both guys that are going to get some snaps obviously throughout training camp and the preseason, I just don't, the upside overall is just tough to kind of see,
Sure. And then with Jake Dixon, undrafted rookie free agent, offensive tackle out of Duquesne, former volleyball player who returned to football, the college game, and it's going to be that local feel-good story. Best hopes there's going to be practice squad. Tackle depth not particularly strong in Pittsburgh right now, but still Dixon will have to show a lot this summer.
Man, oh man. Another situation where you think this kid too was a converted tight end, right? That was at Duquesne, right?
It sounds right. Yeah.
First couple years, I think he arrived at the program at tight end. They kept putting weight on him and then moved him to tackle. And I think he mainly played left tackle in his final 2 seasons at Duquesne. A lot of the wrong stuff, in my opinion, has got to happen for him to make the 53. Either that or he just needs to be lights out to be able to unseat a guy, say like Joe Haig, which there's not a long, that's not a huge jump overall, but obviously Joe Haig's got a lot of experience and can play multiple positions as well too. So I think, and this was a group of 3 that was written about in one series there: Carlos Davis, Khalil Davis, and Jake Dixon. I really think best case scenario or realistic scenario for all 3 of these guys is practice squad.
I'm with you. And then the next couple names that you did in your 90 and 30 series, guys with better chances to make the 53, of course, 2 of them should have been Dotson, Terrell, Edmunds. Also, you mentioned Mateo Durant in that listing as well. I think Dotson's the guy under the microscope the most that we talk about the least. What a big year 3 it is for Kevin Dotson. Last year was kind of a mess. Had all that weird stuff in the summer with him not practicing early on in training camp for, I guess, some sort of unknown injury. Then misses the back half of last year with a high ankle sprain. Really kind of a dud of a year for Kevin Dotson. Did not play particularly well whenever he was healthy the first half of the year anyway. And so, Pittsburgh may frame it as a bit of a competition and battle between Kevin Dotson and Kendrick Green, but there should be Dotson as the clear favorite to win that job, but he has to play well. If not, Pittsburgh may be looking for a new left guard come 2023.
Man, what a huge you want to talk about a guy, huge season for him. We talked about Claypool and all his third season. This is another third season guy that it's time to see it. There was obviously rumblings after he was drafted, and you start going through that tape at Louisiana Lafayette, and man, this guy was the snub of the combine that year. The Steelers really got themselves a steal when it comes to Kevin Dotson. We haven't seen it yet. We've seen a little bit of kind of flashes there with him, and I think, didn't you have a pass protection snap on him, like from going into last season or 2 games into last season or something, where you thought, yeah, that's super impressive with the chopping of the feet and all like that. This guy's got to put it all together now. If we get 2 weeks into training camp and Alex Kozora is telling us that this is a real competition going on between Kevin Dotson and Kendrick Green, I think that's a negative.
Mm-hmm. We got problems. Yeah.
We got some serious problems there. And all due respect to the Kendrick Green fan club out there, but it's time this guy, and look, I get the whole muscle memory thing, and this guy played over 50 games at right guard at Louisiana Lafayette, and there is some level of transition, flipping sides that some players struggle with more than others. I get all that, but he's had enough time now. I really think that this guy's got to make this next jump, and we got to see it. I really am hoping for it. I think he's got it in him to do that, but we've got to see it. But you want to circle a guy that huge question mark about. Talk about guys that need to make jumps. It's him.
I know in some coaching circles, potential is a dirty word, and I can understand that. I don't necessarily share that viewpoint. I think potential is good to have, but potential gets you about a year in the NFL of rope. And then after that, potential doesn't really matter, and it's about what you're actually doing. And the results are what matters. And so, Dotson still has all the potential in the world. I think the talent is there in terms of the size, athleticism, physicality, even technique overall. But you can't talk about his potential anymore. Now it's about put up or shut up. And so this is the time for Dotson to make a move.
Yes, it is. Look, I mean, if he has a season that I think that we're agreeing that he could possibly have, he could be looking at a new contract next offseason. He could be one of the guys who we're thinking, hey, man, are they going to do a contract extension with Kevin Dotson? But he's got to put that on tape. He got to stay healthy for 16 of the 17 games. We got to start seeing the kind of the fruits of the potential and all like that.
Right.
But I mean, a solid season for him could potentially end up with him getting paid.
Yeah, I was gonna, and for anyone who listens to the live stream, I apologize for last night's technical issues. Hopefully things should be worked out for next Monday. Dave and I will try to do one. But one of the questions that was asked, and one I wanted to get your opinion on, the listener said, last year TJ Watt got paid. This year Minkah Fitzpatrick gets paid. Who's the guy who's most likely to get paid in 2023 during the summer? And it's harder to find a name there because it almost won't be Devin Bush, but it could be a Kevin Dotson. So that's something to look for.
Yeah, I mean, look, who would be set? Who is currently scheduled to be?
Claypool could potentially, I suppose, be that guy if Johnson does not get re-signed and Claypool has a really good year.
The Cameron Sutton's contract void after this year?
Yeah, this is the last year. He's going to be a free agent after this year.
Obviously, Boswell's currently scheduled to be a free agent, but we think that gets taken care of. I don't think Derek Watt's going to be anyone we have to worry about. Tyson Alualu, this is probably it for him. Edmunds is on a 1-year deal, but more than likely if Edmunds improves his value.
I think the question was like guys who are under contract through next year who could get paid in the summer, like Minkah Fitzpatrick did or TJ Watt did.
Okay, well, who's even on? Let's see. I mean, it'd be obviously mostly guys from that class, right?
Yeah, so Dotson, Claypool, and Alex Highsmith, I suppose. Could he be in line for someone?
I don't think you can ignore it if he takes the kind of. What happens if a guy like him finally kicks down that door and has the double-digit, sack numbers and the pressure rates to go along with it. I mean, do you want to really go out and have to go back into the draft if you got something in your own backyard that you could extend? Obviously, you're not going to extend him for the amount of money even close to what a TJ Watt is. But, I mean, let's say you something along the lines, I'm a spitball number, $15 million. Is that too? Do you perceive that potentially being too much for a guy like Highsmith if he were to hit, if he were to take that next step in his development in 2022?
It's probably easier to answer that question after you see it take place and all the great plays that he could make if the scenario plays out the way that you're laying it out. I think that's reasonable, but the question is, you could, obviously, but will you invest all of that money into the position when you're paying TJ Watt so much money? It's a little Bud Dupree-like. You like Dupree, you wanted to bring him back, but he was going to be just way too costly. And I know that was the COVID crunch year and it was kind of different set of circumstances, but you just wonder, could you pay another pass rusher, not TJ Watt money, but still a ton of money? That might be the conundrum.
Well, didn't they have James Harrison and Lamar Woodley under big contracts kind of at the same time?
Yeah, they did. That's fair. But obviously, TJ Watt's getting
that $15 million number might be a little strong. Let's go down to $13 million, because look, I mean, that would not even put him, I don't think, in the top 20 at $13 million.
Yeah. I guess the question would be just if Highsmith has a big breakout year, if he continued that path, he could get paid like a number one pass rusher somewhere like Dupree did. And so would Pittsburgh just be able to offer enough, knowing they can't offer, top tier pass rush money?
Well, I mean, we're talking about this is his third year, so obviously he would not be a free agent after this year. It would then next offseason would be the offseason to strike on that, And if you think that guy even would still have another level left in him, and you want him playing, because this team's going to count on his defense the next couple of years, am I wrong?
No, you're right about that.
Right. So I think realistically, I think you're looking at two guys, and potentially most realistically us talking about extensions next offseason would be Dotson or Highsmith.
Yeah, and Highsmith's on a much better course right now in terms of where his play's at.
Sure.
Been more proven. But if a Dotson or if a Claypool really turns things around, that's why year 3 is so big for both of those guys, then they could be in line to get paid handsomely next summer.
All right, we'll be talking about Highsmith soon enough in this series. Terrell Edmunds. My thoughts on Terrell Edmunds are this. I think they got him back on an extremely great deal when it comes to the Steelers. There's not a lot of risk involved in this overall. He's a guy that's been in your system now long enough that understands what's going on. Like it or not, and he gets the bad rub, I think there have been micro improvements in Terrell Edmunds' game every year. Now, even so, are we standing here saying, thank God that they spent a first-round draft pick on him? Absolutely not. But he has made, in my opinion, at least some micro improvements each and every year. If he can take that next step, whatever that step kind of looks like, it's going to really help that back end, especially with the way the unknowns related to kind of the cornerback situation this team's going to have this year. He's got a lot to prove still because he is on a 1-year deal. I don't mind re-signing at all, especially with what they have invested in it. Mm-hmm. If he comes out as shooting, you're not happy with his play at all, you can give him the quick hook. There's no worry about that. He's got enough heat on him on a guy in Deontay Casey behind him now to kind of push him that next level there. I don't know what there's other than the team obviously not drafting a strong safety, which we thought was potentially in the cards this offseason. Other than the team not doing that, I don't know what there's not to like about bringing him back on the deal that they brought him back on.
Yeah, it's what, $2.5 million for Edmunds?
Yeah,
like the cheapest strong safety in the league who's not on a rookie contract. Really good deal. It's hard to get mad at that at all. I mean, he is who he is. You're right; those improvements have been there. Not that you drafted him to have micro improvements, but right. I think it's important to recognize that. But I think at this point, he's probably pretty maxed out.
Sure,
the coverage improvements have been modest, but they're never going to get to a level that you wanted them to be at. But he's your classic box strong safety. He improves his tackling a little bit this year. Then you're fine with it. He's going to be a guy that's durable, dependable, available, 1,000-snap guy all 4 years of his NFL career so far. If he can just play the run a bit better and this front seven overall plays the run better, then you take it.
Some micro improvements that could be made that would make him look that much better. Because I agree. I think he's really tapped out what he is. I think his tackling can improve slightly, yeah, for sure. And if that does, if he lowers the amount of missed tackles, I think that's plausible. And that obviously would go a long way in this defense. Number two is he's not Ike Taylor level though, but there have been some interceptions that have kind of gone through his arms or whatnot, right? There's been some instances with some balls in the air that I think you can just say, man, he should have come down with that. And if he makes let's say he just gets 2 regular interceptions during the regular season, if you were to get 3 more of those just being around, 2 or 3 more of those just being around the ball in the right place at the right time and making kind of an athletic grab. I mean, here we are, we're looking at 5 interceptions for Terrell Edmunds. And even though it's just a matter of catching some balls that he hadn't caught in the past, that's huge, right?
Yeah, if he could get to that number, that would be fantastic. But I don't have much hope he'll get to anything resembling 5 interceptions. Just to put the numbers on the missed tackles, according to Josh Carney in 2020, Terrell Edmunds had a 9.2 missed tackle rate. In 2021, it went up to, I think, 13.6. And so some of that's statistical noise, and it's a relatively small sample size, so one missed tackle can skew numbers a little bit, but you did see him going in the wrong direction. So an under 10% missed tackle rate, 2 interceptions, just decent play the ball, tackle the catch, kind of, coverage ability with a run defense that becomes top 10 overall, then I would take that as a good season from Terrell Edmunds.
Drops and all are like interceptions to some degree. You got to let me see it. Let me see what happened on the play. But I think I'm going to throw this out there right now. I think it's plausible that Terrell Edmunds could have 4 interceptions in 2022, and we look back at it and people are trying to defend against his interceptions and saying, well, 3 of those were tipped up in the air and went right in his arm. I don't care how you get them.
Right. As long as you get them. Yeah. I mean, I think one of his last...
going there.
I do.
I think
last
we could
year, was a tip, wasn't
it? Right. Yeah. I think it was. But I really think we could come, and that's why I'm talking about kind of the micro improvements in here with him, is I think we could see a situation where potentially his missed tackles drop down a little bit more. He's not going to be we've always talked about he's got to show up in the box score more however he needs to do it, whether it be a forced fumble, a fumble recovery, an interception. I've always thought that assisted interception should be a stat. But something where maybe he's the one knocking the ball up in the air and somebody gets it. Those are the little things where we got to see him show up more in 2022. We have got to see the missed tackles go down, and we got to say, well, you know what? That turnover wouldn't have happened unless Edmunds would have been on the field in that situation.
Yeah, you're right. I'm with you. I still don't see him getting 4 interceptions under any circumstances. Dude has 5 interceptions in 4 years, and I think, like I mentioned, he's gotten some assisted picks on some plays last year. But if he can just pick off 2, again, tackle well, play good run defense, at this point in his career, I'm good with that.
Right. Be around the ball.
Yeah, and again, he's not what the team hoped he would be as a first-round pick. But this guy has been available, durable, dependable, like on the field a ton, and that in itself may not always seem obvious in terms of the value, but just knowing you can have him out there for every single snap is pretty rare to find. So you do want to give him some credit there.
Right, and once again, I think it's fair in saying that this kid's made micro improvements throughout his career, but in the same breath, we're having to judge that on a former first-round draft pick. That's not what you kind of want to be talking about,
right.
In there. But I think he has not gotten enough credit for what he is along the lines of these last 3 years, if that makes sense.
That's fair. I'm
not trying to put him in the Pro Bowl. And look, if he wouldn't have signed the deal that he had signed, he wouldn't have been back, nor should he have been back on anything more than what he signed for. I think I did kind of predict that he'd be back on a low level deal, and he was in that. But he can help his value for next offseason with the Steelers in 2022. But with all that said, I would expect this to be it for him potentially.
Well, I'll say personally that number was lower. It was not going to be $10 million, but I thought he'd get $5 million just as a starting strong safety in the NFL. $5 million seemed to be about the going rate for a dude that's 25 years old. So 2.5 I thought was even lower than what I thought it would be. But
the market tells you, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it does for sure. But he is just, to me, in a quick answer, he is a definition of average, and that's okay. I'm not mad at him for it. And you got an All-Pro with Minka, next year, that works out well. But he is just your very much average classic box safety, and that's always going to be.
Right.
And then Mateo Durant, undrafted rookie free agent out of Duke, interesting guy. One of the more notable free agents that I thought the team signed as part of this year's pool. Pittsburgh at his pro day, Kevin Colbert more specifically at his pro day, straying away from the typical 5'10", 220-pound type of back that Pittsburgh likes to collect on the roster. Durant, I think he's maybe about 5'9", 5'10", but less than 200 pounds, more of a speedster, ran 4.38 at his pro day. While he wasn't used in the pass game a ton at Duke, he made some really impressive high degree of difficulty catches, some great one-handed grabs on his reel. So just a different style of back, more speed, more space, more receiving, and I kind of like that element in that room as at the very least something different compared to the rest of the big, burly, quote-unquote power backs in this room.
Look, I'm just one of those young guys on the roster that it seems like, at least where we sit right now, that there might be a potential roster spot for him to take, but he's got to take it. And I've gone through quite a bit of his work at Duke now at this point. Look, if you're going to get on the field and as a running back in the NFL, even if it's part-time, it's going to be interesting. You got to be able to pass protect to some degree, at least be able to be a speed bump and know where a guy's coming from in certain situations. If you don't, you get a quarterback killed in today's NFL. So I think that this is a guy that can show you something with the football in his hands, running, catching the passes. I think he has enough special teams pedigree that I don't think he's going to be totally lost throwing him out there in that phase of it there. But will we see all phases of it throughout the rest of the preseason there? And that includes blocking when it comes to him. So I'm going to be interested to read the backs on the backers drill when it comes to a guy like him from you later this summer there. I think he legitimately has a shot at the 53-man roster. Now, will the Steelers still decide in these next couple months to go outside and get a more polished, more experienced guy to potentially, let's say, be a number 3 or a number 2 running back, if you view Benny Snell as being whatever the opposite of that is, a number 2 or number 3, it's plausible there. But as we've talked about several other guys of these 6, I think a more realistic approach with him is potentially practice squad his rookie season.
It is, but I think it's very fair to say there is an open running back spot on the roster right now. Najee Harris has his spot locked in. I think Benny Snell has a strong bet to make the team preferably as a number 3, but even as a number 2, there's going to be an open spot. They're going to carry at least 3 running backs overall. And so who that third guy is going to be is very much up for grabs. McFarland, Warren, Durant, street free agent. In some world where like Connor Hayward kind of sort of counts. I mean, we'll have to see how exactly they use him. But I think there's going to be a third true running back spot up for grabs, and someone could take charge and make it happen.
Yeah, who's the other back? Jalen
Warren from Oklahoma State.
Jalen Warren. I like Durant more top to bottom than I do Warren.
But I think Warren has the size the team looks for. They don't usually carry the smaller backs and have not had success with those smaller guys. And so each guy's their own person. Durant could be different, but I think what Warren has going for him is kind of the size. He's 5'8", 220, I want to say, or 5'9". I mean, he's got kind of the body type Pittsburgh likes.
Okay, but a spot's open, and I'm interested to hear reports on all those running backs not named Najee Harris and Benny Snell as we get into camp.
Yeah, and you would imagine there's going to be a lot of opportunities this year because Harris is going to be treated like Le'Veon Bell and James Conner were kind of in their heyday in Pittsburgh. Don't need many carries out of Harris in camp this year. And right. Contact drills, Harris may not get tackled once in camp this year, and I'm okay with that because you've already seen what you have in him. You don't have to kind of get his meter going so early in the summer. So should be a lot of opportunity for those other backs to show what they can do.
All right, so that's the 6, right? Carlos Davis, Khalil Davis, Jake Dixon, Kevin Dotson, Mateo Durant, and Terrell Edmunds that we talked pretty extensive about today. So the next 6, I think, will be Trey Edmunds, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Pat Freiermuth. That ought to be a healthy discussions there. The other 3 would be, I think, Zach Gentry, Nate Gilliam, and Chaz Green.
That second group a little less interesting than the first group, but.
Yeah.
I don't know if, Dave, you want to talk about it too much. Jerry Dulac was, I think, doing a radio hit in Baltimore or something the other day and talked about how players were upset with Matt Canada and specifically some of the formations and calls that he made last year. Obviously, things didn't go well offensively last year, so it's understandable there'd be frustration and some tension probably associated with that. That sound like Tomlin here. So I don't make much out of this story, but that is, to me, new information, so worth passing along.
Yeah, and one of the things that's going to be needs to be talked about in this is how much did Ben Roethlisberger play a role in that, with trying to keep him happy and making sure you adjust around his skill set at the time properly versus what you would maybe like to do. That's really why I think right now at this point is you got to just erase everything that's happened up until this point. With Matt Canada, you reset the meter and you see what elements of this offense, and you've broken it down, I think, in 4 different posts, I think, since Matt Canada was actually hired, of things that we think that we could expect to see if he's running the offense that we think that he really wants to run. And if we see a lot of that, it's going to look a lot different than what we've seen so far, right? With the quarterbacks on the move, with heavy shifts, heavy motion, quarterbacks actually under center, the use of the pistol. Just a lot of different elements here that we haven't seen a lot of just yet. So, in my opinion, 2022 really becomes the first, measuring stick when it comes to Canada, and how good that looks might determine whether or not there's a 2023
right.
For Canada, even if you're a team that, let's say, does not make the playoffs. Did it look like there was some promise there? And we'll be able to tell that or not, because really what this team has offensively, as far as pieces are, at least for the next 2 seasons, you'd like to think that kind of what you see is what you get, right? For as far as personnel goes, yeah, there might be another tackle or a guard moving forward, but what's there is what's there now. I think at this point, at least for the next 2 seasons.
Sure, talk about big years, guys under the microscope. It's Matt Canada, and I wrestle with it a little bit because I understand the difficulty of last year, that awkward fit between Canada and Ben. But at the same point, Canada's the OC, and can you really take everything he did and didn't do last year off the table? To an extent, maybe. Again, the circumstances were kind of different, but to the here and now, this is going to be his year. No excuses, even knowing this offense has got all the youth and growing pains. Offensive line is still trying to figure stuff out. Uncertainty at quarterback. This offense has to take significant steps in the right direction. Canada can't keep having excuses about who he's dealing with and expect that to fly. And so this is a huge year for Canada and for the Steelers offense.
Look, this is Matt Canada's offense now. This isn't Ben Roethlisberger / Matt Canada's offense or whatever. This is his offense. We have to see things that we can tie the wagon to, or potentially see the wagon being tied to for the next 2 years. If we can't or don't, then this very well could be it for him.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt here, but some breaking news. Tony Busby announcing that all but 4 of the lawsuits against Deshaun Watson have been settled. So all but 4. Not sure what the outlook is for the 4 outstanding, but interesting there. Watson had said in the past he would not settle these cases, but obviously as things have mounted against him publicly and legally in the civil court of law, it looks like there was 26, I think, allegations, or I don't want to get the numbers incorrect here, but point is all but 4 of the lawsuits have been settled according to attorney Tony Busby.
All right, so what does that mean? It means he's I wonder how much the Browns played a part in this as well too, saying you got to get these things put aside, and I wonder how much pressure the league is giving them, saying,
I don't like the league saying anything right now because they're still in their investigation. That might be conflict of interest if they're telling him what to do. The Browns probably might be saying something, but I think Watson knows these things need to be settled, and that was really the only avenue that was best for him. Now you just wait to see what the NFL does in terms of any sort of punishment suspension.
How much does this, or doesn't it, play into discipline?
That's a good question. I mean, the NFL was already reportedly wrapping up their investigation. I don't think it really should play too much in terms of what the actual punishment should be or ends up being. I don't know if it changes that too much. But does this now allow the NFL to more confidently make that decision now that these cases have largely been resolved?
Interesting. And you would have to think that with training camp quickly approaching, at least an initial decision on the punishment will have to be made, so at least the Browns can go one direction or the other here, right?
Right, and you would think really that news would come a lot sooner than later because the NFL reportedly wants to also have the initial punishment suspension, announced, but also any sort of appeals done and processed prior to camp, or prior to the season, I should say. And so the sooner the better to get that whole process started. You got to have a punishment that comes pretty quick. So maybe some have speculated 4th of July weekend, the NFL will drop the news. That seems to be kind of their MO. And so that's kind of the date that I'm looking at right now.
Sort of a news dump, huh?
Yeah, that Friday, 4th of July weekend. I think they've done that stuff before, so that would kind of make sense as the initial announcement, and then there's probably going to be, assuming there is a punishment to be handed out, an appeal process, and that whole thing.
All right, Brother Alex, what else we got?
I think that's everything. We can move on to some reader emails and close out today's show.
Real quick, what did you think about the Cruz kid? How can you not get excited for that? And thank God, poor Pirates fans need something to get excited about. But and I know it was one game and yada yada, but let me tell you, that kid can throw a baseball, and he can hit a baseball, and the superlatives coming out just of a couple of those stats alone for that kid, and he's 6'7"? That's a tall drink of water. I could not help but think when he was tagging, coming around third on that play at the plate there, of, man, I wonder if that kid could play the Z. Runs like Martavis Bryant, if you ask me. So real quick, you know more about the kid than I do. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, really exciting. Obviously, there's different types of players, but the excitement Cruz brought yesterday was, to me, very similar to the excitement Andrew McCutchen brought whenever he first came up as a Pittsburgh Pirate. So, I mean, steps onto the diamond and basically becomes one of your best players out of the gate, and just kind of setting records for velocity and hardest throw and speed and stuff like that. And how about Majerus too? The outfielder had a big day, first career hit and 3 for 4, 2 RBI single for his first hit. So Pirates, some excitement. I just don't know. I didn't bring him up Friday. I go to the game Friday, hoping they would call him up for a weekend slate. It'd be a great time. You got a decent crowd on hand. You could pack that place, and instead I get to watch a 2-hit shutout of the Pirates losing, and I get to miss out on in person O'Neal Cruz just tearing it up.
What's the old saying? Rising tide lifts all ships, and that kind of felt like it was the. I could not help think, but last night while watching that game against the Cubs, that man, this guy's presence alone is making everybody else around him a little bit better, and I mean, it felt like they couldn't do no wrong against the Cubs. It's gonna be interesting to see if they can back that up again in the rest of this year. It's early. Is it plausible? Is this kid up early enough? And if he stays up, is it plausible that he could win Rookie of the Year or whatever the award is for that?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy. I think a guy midway through a year could be in contention. I don't have a great pulse on who are the leaders for, in a Rookie of the Year and what guys are doing really well. You got the other kid, Jack Sawinski, who's got 11 home runs this year, who should be in some sort of consideration. So I guess it's plausible if he keeps playing the way he's playing. And that just kind of speaks to the level of talent that he is, the fact that we're even able to plausibly entertain that question.
Now, they gave him I think he wore 61 or something the first time. He's got 15 this time. That's a pretty good sign he's probably going to stay up, right?
Correct. I guess, yeah. I don't know baseball numbers too well, but yeah, again, this was not his debut. You're right. He came up last year. Actually, already has a home run. He hit late last season. But yeah, I think if he's not here to stay, then we got big problems. I think that dude's going to be in Pittsburgh for a long time, hopefully a long time at least.
Yeah, definitely. The Pirates always usually try to make a run right before the 4th of July weekend, or at least give some sense of false, whatever. But it sure would be nice to see that right now with him attached to it right now. But all right, that'll end the Pirates Depot section of the podcast. But
and just real quick, the Steelers rookies were there, so they got to take note to follow suit.
All right, got an email from Chris Warren here. He says, "Hi, guys. Recently you posted an interesting article on Deontay's drop passes by route." He says, "I've always felt like most of the drops occur in instances where Deontay is about to hit or about to be hit or when he thinks he might take a big shot. This is further evidenced by the way Deontay tends to quickly hop backwards after catching the ball. Sure, he wants the yards after the catch, but he also is trying to keep from getting crushed." He says, "I'm not questioning his toughness at all. The dude is small. I'm just wondering whether it would make sense to adjust his route tree slightly so that he isn't running so many slants." What do you guys think? I think they are varying him up enough, but it has become obvious that a lot of Deontay's drops, I feel, have come with him easily within 7 yards of the line of scrimmage, probably more within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, and him working from outside inside, a la via a slant or a short underneath crosser, is when we've seen some of them alligator arms, if you will, and seen some of the drops. At some point, though, you got to catch most of those, though. So if you're going to alter that, teams are going to pick up on you altering that as well too, and compensating for it. I get it. I see it. I know where you're coming from, Chris. But at some point, you can't alter it significantly. There comes a point where he's going to have to catch some quick slants at key portions of the game with people on them and with their being a linebacker in the middle of the field.
Yeah, it looked like most of his drops, and that was Andrew Shaver who did the study, so kudos to him. Most of those drops came over the middle of the field, which matches the eye test. The question is, how different is that relative to other receivers? I don't have that kind of data. I imagine there are more drops on in-breaking routes than there are on other type of routes, so it's a little hard to compare overall. But you're right. I mean, and that's why, some people have said about Johnson playing in the slot more this year. They're going to mix and match, but Johnson should be more the X guy because when you're in that slot, you're going to be over the middle of the field a bit more, and that's going to probably will invite more contact and probably invite more drops. So he needs to stay as the X receiver the majority of the time.
Right, I agree. And Chris, if you want to point to exactly one portion of the game where we need to see Deontay improve at, it is in the area that you just said. When there is a middle of the field defender kind of walling that off, if you will, and trying to protect against that, and Deontay having to make a tough catch. Absolutely, that's an area. But I don't think you alter it. If you're going to be a top wide receiver in this NFL and you're going to be paid like it, you got to make those catches occasionally.
Yeah, you do. And I think there's been improvement there, but there's still some improvement to go.
All right. I think that's really the only significant question that we have in here, Alex. So anything to add? What maybe we'll be talking about Larry Ogunjobi on Friday. Maybe we won't.
We'll talk about him either way, either that he signed or didn't sign. Yeah. We'll talk about him.
What else we likely to be talking about on Friday?
Other than that, who the heck knows? Doing a study on I did a study on third down win rates and moves on the edge guys. Now I'm doing the same for defense alignment today with Isaiah Loudermilk. Got a video on TJ Watt's rip move, which is so darn effective, especially on those money downs. That'll go up tomorrow on Steelers Depot. So we'll see. The NFL always surprises us, so we'll talk about whatever there is to talk about on Friday.
Absolutely, we will. All right, in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we're doing and want to donate to the cause, please go to SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, go to SteelersDepot.com and hit it that way as well, too, for $25. So in the meantime, until Friday, good job, Alex. And as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.